Now, overwhelming that one of Britain's most beloved entertainers, the late Sir Jimmy Savile, was also a predatory sex offender. It's believed he abused young children over many decades.
Imagine living your entire life believing you got away with murder. Decades pass. The witnesses die. The evidence grows cold. The case file gathers dust. You age from a young man into your 90s, and still, no knock on the door, no consequence, no justice. Until one day, modern science catches up with your past.
Good morning, hello, I'm from the police. Mr. Headley?
Yeah.
And suddenly, at 92 years old, you're facing the reckoning you thought would never come. This is the extraordinary true story of how the United Kingdom's oldest cold case was finally solved after 58 years, bringing justice to a family that had waited nearly 6 decades for answers. On a summer evening in 1967, Bristol, England was a different world. The Beatles dominated the airwaves, colour television was just becoming affordable, and DNA profiling was still decades away from being invented. On Britannia Road in the eastern neighbourhood, 75-year-old Louisa Dunn lived quietly in her modest home. She was a widow and grandmother who enjoyed the simple pleasures of life. But on June 28th of that year, a neighbour made a horrifying discovery that would haunt Bristol for more than half a century. They found Louisa dead on her living room floor, the victim of a brutal attack in the place where she should have felt safest. The investigation that followed was massive by any standard. Police collected palm prints from 19,000 men and boys in the local area. They conducted 8,000 house-to-house inquiries and took 2,000 witness statements. Neighbors reported hearing a woman's frightening scream on the night of the attack. Investigators found a partial palm print on a window at the back of Louisa's home and discovered physical evidence that she had been sexually assaulted before being strangled and asphyxiated with a scarf. Despite this enormous effort and the evidence collected, the case went nowhere. The technology simply didn't exist to process what they had found, and the palm print didn't match any of the thousands collected. The trail went cold, and as years turned into decades, it seemed increasingly likely that Louisa's killer would never face justice, but someone knew the truth. 34-year-old Ryland Headley, a railway worker who lived just over a mile away from Louisa's home on Picton Street, had committed this horrific crime. What investigators didn't know then was that Headley lived just beyond the perimeter where they were collecting palm prints from local men. Shortly after the murder, he moved to London and later to Ipswich, never having to submit his prints in Bristol. He seemingly vanished into ordinary life, raising a family and living as if nothing had happened. For 58 years, he carried this secret, but Headley's pattern of violence didn't end with Louisa Dunn. 10 years later, in 1977, he struck again in Ipswich. This time, he broke into the homes of 2 elderly women, one in her 70s and another in her 80s, and raped them both. The similarities to the attack on Louisa were chilling. Both victims were elderly. Both were attacked in their homes. Both assaults involved breaking and entering, followed by sexual violence. Headley pleaded guilty to these crimes in 1978 and was initially sentenced to life imprisonment, though this was later reduced on appeal to just 7 years. He served his time and was released, but crucially, DNA databases didn't exist yet, so his genetic profile wasn't recorded. The breakthrough that would eventually solve Louisa's murder wouldn't come for another 35 years. In 2012, Headley was arrested for an unrelated incident that didn't result in charges. However, his DNA was collected and added to the national database as part of standard procedure. At the time, no one connected this elderly man's DNA to a murder that had occurred 45 years earlier. The sample sat in the database, waiting. Meanwhile, Louisa's case file remained filed away, unsolved and seemingly unsolvable. Her granddaughter, Mary Dainton, had long since accepted that some murders simply never get solved, that some families have to live with emptiness and sadness forever. Then, in 2023, something remarkable happened. Cold case detectives with Avon and Somerset Police decided to review Louisa's case using modern forensic technology. The skirt Louisa had been wearing when she died had been preserved as evidence for over 5 decades. In May of that year, it was sent for advanced forensic testing that hadn't been available in 1967. Scientists were able to extract a complete DNA profile from biological evidence on the garment. When they ran that profile through the national database, they got a hit. The DNA matched Ryland Headley, now 91 years old and living quietly in Suffolk. Detective Inspector Dave Marchant, the senior investigating officer, later described the moment police received the positive result as having a sense of gravity to it. They had identified a dangerous serial offender with a shocking and abhorrent history. Forensic scientists calculated that the DNA recovered from the crime scene was 1 billion times more likely to belong to Headley than to anyone else. But DNA wasn't the only evidence connecting him to the crime. 4 separate fingerprint experts analyzed the partial palm print found on Louisa's window back in 1967. All 4 independently concluded it belonged to Ryland Headley. Records from 2012 noted that Headley had arthritis and inflexible palms, which had prevented palm print collection at that time. However, following his arrest for Louisa's murder in November 2020, 4 prints were successfully taken, and forensic experts identified over 25 matching features with the crime scene print. In November 2024, police arrived at Headley's home in Ipswich to arrest him. When questioned, the 92-year-old responded with apparent confusion, saying he didn't know what they were talking about and calling it very strange. He denied both charges of rape and murder and chose not to give evidence during his trial at Bristol Crown Court. The prosecution faced extraordinary challenges. All but one of the trial witnesses had died over the nearly 6 decades since the crime. The legal team had to rely on written statements taken at the time of the murder, voices from the past speaking on behalf of a woman who could no longer speak for herself. Crucially, the prosecution successfully argued that Headley's 2 previous rape convictions from the 1970s should be presented to the jury. While a defendant's previous convictions aren't automatically admissible in English courts, the similarities between the attack on Louisa and the 2 later offences were simply too great to ignore. The accounts of those 2 women from 1977, now long deceased, were read aloud in court. Detective Inspector Marchant later described hearing the voices of those victims as incredibly powerful and harrowing, providing insight into what probably happened in Louisa's home that June night in 1967. After nearly 10 hours of deliberation, the jury of 8 men and 4 women reached their verdict on June 30, 2025, guilty. Ryland Headley was convicted of both rape and murder. The courtroom heard victim impact statements, including one from Louisa's granddaughter, Mary Dainton, who is now approximately the same age her grandmother was when she was killed. She told the court that her grandmother's unsolved murder had cast a cloud over the rest of her mother's life, causing her to become and remain very ill. Dainton expressed deep sadness that all the people who knew and loved Louisa weren't there to see justice finally served. The following day, July 1st, Justice Derek Sweeting sentenced Headley to life in prison with a minimum term of 20 years. Given Headley's age, this effectively means he will spend whatever time he has left behind bars. The judge's words were unsparing. He told Headley that he had committed a pitiless and cruel act, that he had broken into Louisa's home, sexually assaulted her, and caused her death. While Headley may not have intended to kill, he had planned to rape her and brutally attacked her. The violation of her home, her body, and ultimately her life was described as an act by a depraved man. Justice Sweeting also noted that by escaping punishment for so long, Headley had compounded the suffering of Louisa's family. Crown Prosecutor Charlotte Ream emphasized that this verdict demonstrated the commitment of the Crown Prosecution Service and police to relentlessly pursue justice for crime victims. No matter how many years or decades have passed, Detective Inspector Marchant stated he is now working with the National Crime Agency to determine whether Headley may be responsible for any other unsolved offences over the decades, describing him as a dangerous serial offender. The question remains, how many other crimes might this man have committed during the 58 years he walked free? This case stands as the United Kingdom's longest running cold case ever to be solved. It's a testament to the determination of investigators. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the importance of justice no matter how long it takes, then hit that subscribe button right now. We bring you the most compelling true crime stories, cold case breakthroughs, and criminal justice updates every single week. Like this video to help it reach more people who care about these stories, and turn on notifications so you never miss when we post. Justice delayed is not justice denied when dedicated investigators refuse to give up. Stay with us as we continue to follow stories where truth eventually prevails, no matter how long the wait. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.